feeding a few young colonies that need to draw some comb. This field here has been soybeans the past couple years, but it's just dry land, not real great soil, and it hasn't yielded very well. So the landowner told me that they're going to rotate it back into a pasture hay mix, heavy in white clover. There's about 60 acres total. So I am okay with that. 60 acres of good white clover with a bee yard right next to it. I am okay with that. I see a plowed field like this, I can't help but look for arrowheads and artifacts and stuff. Finding some glass and pieces of plates and pottery, things like that. There must have been an old homestead here at one point. Just wonder what those people's lives were like. Would have been a lot different from ours. There's a piece of a crock. That's neat. So the high water mark for me in hive counts usually happens around, I don't know, mid-May, early June, somewhere in there. You make nukes and find queen cells and make splits and unplanned, planned, whatever. And then the rest of the year, it just declines until about late March of the following year. And right now we're in that shrinking time before fall. So this is a single deep that I got from Bob Benny back in spring. And this colony went queenless. I don't know why. I don't know if I squished her accidentally or she just died. But they went queenless. And I dropped a swarm cell into them that I found in another colony. That didn't work out. So then I added, at 2 different times, about 2 weeks apart, I added a frame of eggs and very young larvae from another colony into this one so that they could make an emergency queen. That didn't work out. So the last thing I did is I had a really small weak nuke on top of a double screen on one of these other colonies, and I dropped that on this one. That hasn't worked out either. This colony's done. I'm going to shake them out. I will take the comb and either give it to other hives that need it or go ahead and store it for next year. Begin that process. They're basically empty. They've been fed, but they're not storing anything. They've been laying worker at one point. I'm not seeing any laying worker brood in there now, but there's no brood at all. So this is the shrinking time of year. I don't have time for nonsense like this in July. There's no way that this colony is going to be a good colony coming into spring next year. It's just not working. It's just not worth fooling with when I've got a bunch of other ones that are doing what they're supposed to. So this hive second from the end down here, I noticed a problem in it before I went on vacation. I didn't really feel like I had time to do anything because I was leaving the next day. Just didn't have the population, and I just busted it apart and see wax moth. So they probably went queenless and dwindled, then got robbed out. They obviously got robbed out because of all the cappings underneath and out front. Wax moth are starting to clean all that up. But it's not terrible yet. So if I find a two box hive in this yard that has got a really strong population and could handle a third, I'll drop this on top. What I have found is even with moth crystals, if you've got an active infestation, the moth crystals won't kill the larvae, or at least not quickly. Moth crystals work best at preventing infestation. Once you've actually got worms in there, you need to either put it on a strong colony or freeze it. That's the best thing to do. Almost ready to spray foam the shipping container. This is one of the worst jobs you can imagine. It's very hot. Here's the aftermath. I did at least 2 coats on the roof. I believe that's where most of the solar gain will be from, as well as this wall over here, because this is south facing. So it'll catch sun, more sun. But this one's not gonna be a drying room or anything like that. It doesn't have to be, or a bottling room. It doesn't have to be super well insulated. I just need to keep it below about 100 degrees in here. I think a small window AC unit will do that without too much trouble. Need to be able to store honey. I can't let it get up to 130, 140, which these things can do in the summer. Another benefit of the insulation is it completely removes condensation. So there will be no condensation in this thing forevermore. Even if you just get a 1/4 inch on the side, as long as it's covering all the steel, then it won't condensate anymore. So I'll let this air out a bit and then get some trash bags and start the cleanup. Won't be too bad. First warning shots of fall. I think it'll be in the early leaf change this year because of the drought that we've had. It's just July 22nd. But boy, the season's coming to a close quick. See a sourwood up there. July 22nd, I'm getting concerned about getting comb drawn. It gets so hard to make bees draw comb in August in Tennessee. They just don't want to do anything. I mean, nothing. It's hard to get them to draw comb in July, but you can still do it. So, man, the time is coming to a close. I've got hives in this yard that I'll actually pull some honey from, a few of them. And then I've got a bunch that are in 3 boxes, but that third is not drawn out yet. I've got a feeder in the second box, 1 gallon. And the ones that have got a lot of work to do and have already got a 3rd box on them, I'm probably gonna add another feeder today and be able to give them 2 gallons. Just try to flood them and get them that pop of resource that hopefully will get them to finish these boxes out and start getting heavy for winter. You got to strike while the iron's hot, and the iron is cooling off quick. It's coming to a close. So this is what I'm talking about on this hive. A good hive. They're into their 3rd box. I pulled 1 comb up and they have just started drawing that out. You can see a little bit of wax there. They've even got some over to here, but they've got 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 frames that are not drawn. I gave them a gallon of feed last week. They are taking it. So I'm just gonna give them another feeder. So this is a colony that I won't give 2 feeders to. I don't think they can handle it. They are just not progressing like the other colonies in this yard. I think I may have boosted them with 1 brood frame. I'm not for sure. I know I boosted this one and another one back here behind me. And they're doing pretty good now, but this one, they got a lot of work to do. I may have an inferior queen in here, so I don't want to invest too many resources. But if they'll draw some frames out for me, then that's fine. And then very likely they'll get culled out next spring if they make it through winter. So a lot of these 3s I'm trying to get to grow have got a honey dome in this second. And bees a lot of times don't like to work up above that, especially in July and August. And I could come in and lift a bunch of those frames up and checkerboard them in here, or just put a chunk of foundations down in this second and then feed them, and that would probably induce them to draw that out a little better. But that's a lot of work when you start doing it at scale, and I'm alone. So I'm gonna add a second feeder in the top box, give them 2 gallons. They've taken a gallon in a little less than a week, or just over a week. So hopefully this will buy me a week and a half or so, and just keep pouring the feed to them. I'm feeding like 1.5 or 1.3 to 1, real thin syrup. So hopefully we can get some more production out of them, get some of these frames drawn before winter. This is more like it. Got bees drawn all the way out to the corners. That's awesome. Give them a weight check. Oh, they're heavy enough for winter right now. So I'll just turn these outer frames to the inside. Hopefully they'll draw them out a little better, and they should be done. So I really do like the Man Lake frames. I've used a lot of different foundations in them, Acorn, the Man Lake foundation. I've tried some Peerco frames. I've tried some Acorn frames. I generally like wood frames. I think the tolerances are more correct, because with plastic frames, I get more burr comb on the tops of the frames, and they will glue the box above it down to the frames underneath, and you pull frames up when you're trying to break the boxes apart, and it's frustrating. They've also got more places for hive beetles to hide, but there's a lot to be said for these plastic frames. They're basically indestructible. You do get more comb area because the bees, you don't have the thick top and bottom bar, so the bees actually get more cells on these plastic frames, and they're quite a bit cheaper. And I wanted to note that these are Acorn double waxed frames, and the bees draw these out really, really well. I think the double wax is probably worth it, whether you do it with Man Lake or Peerco or Acorn or whatever. I really do think that double wax pays off. The bees jump on it and draw it out a lot faster. Another thing I like about wood frames is they show their age. So if you've got a 5-year-old frame next to a 2-year-old frame, you can tell the difference in the color. They get darker as they get older. So on this subject of feeding, somebody asked me, I don't know how Ian Stepler does this. How do you film and work at the same time? Somebody asked me I don't know how to do this. All right, there we go. So somebody asked me, when do I start feeding 2-to-1 syrup? The answer is, I hope I don't have to. I don't normally feed 2-to-1. Don't sting me, that's not nice. That is not nice. I'm here to help. I'm killing your hive beetles, I'm giving you food. I'm gonna give you an extra feeder. So quit stinging me. The advantage to feeding 2-to-1 is the bees store it quickly. They build weight quickly. And that's about it. The advantage to me feeding 1.5 or 1.3 to 1 right now is I'm promoting colony health by making these bees grow. You also get that antiseptic condition within the hive that Bob Benny talks a lot about in his feeding videos. I'm getting drawn combs out of it. So there's a lot of advantages to me feeding 1.3 or 1.5 to 1 right now. This is late July. I will continue feeding 1.3 or 1.5 to 1 until these bees are completely drawn out and heavy for winter. I don't intend to feed 2 to 1. If I have little nukes that get caught by the season and they are just not going to be big enough to make it, I'll winter them with fawning on top of them. So I generally don't feed 2 to 1. I think where the 2 to 1 comes in is more up north, where you've got such a condensed season. You know, my friend Troy Hall, goodness, he starts making honey in May and he makes it until August, and then he's got to have his bees fed up by September. You can't do that without feeding 2 to 1. But I've got such a long season down here, and we've got such a long summer dearth. You know, July, August, we've got nothing. And then September, we'll have the goldenrod and aster bloom, but it's really just a pollen bloom. They don't get any nectar from that, or not much in most years. They can in some years. So where I'm at, there's a lot of advantages to feeding thin syrup through the season, through the dearth, the growing season into the dearth, and be done with them before fall. Up north, it's a different deal. It is hive beetle season in Tennessee. We had a wet spring, since we've got a big beetle population. Every lid. I'd say that was average, it's not too bad. I hate hive beetles. I've got some that are a whole lot worse than that and are needing remedial action. I think I'm getting a handle on the hive beetles through my routine applications of Grub X, Scott's Grub X. Active ingredient is chlorantraniliprole, which is relatively bee safe, but it's supposed to prevent the beetles from pupating in the ground. All of my bee yards are treated with that. And I think I'm making progress, but I've got a reservoir left over from last year, reservoir population of beetles. I'm just having to manage my way through. All right, so I almost always get more hive beetles on the ends of the rows. I've seen no research on that. I don't hear a lot of people talking about it, but that's been my experience. So, end of the row, we're gonna see what this one looks like. Tons of beetles on that one frame that they've got good and propolized. Tons of beetles. This hive will need some remedial action. I know I'm going to get questions about what I will do about this. Those are valid questions. I'm not going to answer them. It's like when people ask me, how much oxalic acid do you use per brood chamber? Well, on apibioxyl, which is the only labeled oxalic acid that is legal to use in beehives, I think currently we're able to use 1 gram per brood chamber. So the label is the law. Uh-oh. This nozzle is getting tired. Boy, look at all the beetles coming out of that feeder. That's insane. We're going to have to do something about this. There are a lot of ways to... Don't sting me. There's a lot of ways to kill beetles. So Lewis Bartlett at UGA is working with a private company to explore the use of chlorantraniliprole in a beetle bait, sort of like a roach bait, that you can then put in like a beetle barn and get that labeled for use in beehives. I am really looking forward to that. I know there are a lot of beekeepers who use beetle barns with roach bait, which is not legal, with great success. It would be really nice if we had a labeled product, especially for these hives that exhibit what I was talking about in my last video, the aggregation behavior of pests and parasites. These hive beetles are aggregating in specific colonies, and that's not a bad colony. It's just on the end of the row, and the beetles aggregate on the ends of the rows for whatever reason. That's my observation, not scientific fact. So we don't have a lot of options to treat hive beetles. I can use oil trays. Those are messy and expensive and time consuming. I don't have the labor for that. This is a seasonal issue for me. I need to get the population knocked down in some of these hives right now. And then, you know, I've got the landscape treatment that should be the long-term aid. I won't say solution, but long-term aid in getting the hive beetle numbers under control. So that's a difficult issue. You know, the label is law, but we don't have a lot of products that we can use, and I'm gonna lose some hives because hive beetles are so bad. We need more, beekeepers need more options. The problem is our industry is not billions and billions and billions of dollars, and because of that, it doesn't get the development, it doesn't get the investment that other industries get. All right, different subject I want to talk about is my feed system is beyond capacity for the amount of hives that I've got right now. Well, I'd say not beyond capacity, but efficient size. I've got a 55-gallon drum in the back of my truck with a 4.5 or 4.7 gallon per minute battery-powered pump and 75-foot hose with a gas nozzle. It works fine, but you know, if I'm feeding a yard of, my yards are set up at 24 colonies, so I can feed 2 yards, 1 gallon per colony, and then I've got to go make another batch of syrup. If I'm feeding 2 gallons per colony, that's 1 yard per trip, so it gets to be a lot of trips. So I'm already working on upgrading that system. I've got a real deal hose reel in. I've got a real deal pump in that will be faster and better. It's a gear pump, still battery powered. And I've got a hose. I need to get an IBC tote, and I need to build a, I don't know, I'm thinking of like building a dolly kind of thing to mount all that stuff on, so I can strap it down on a trailer and just mount this system on a trailer. And then I should be able to make, you know, a couple 100 gallons of syrup and go feed 4 yards at a go. That's probably going to be a next year thing, though. I've got to get through this feeding season. I don't have time with honey harvest coming up to be tinkering with a project. I'm also going to set up a mixing tank. Probably will use an old watering trough or something to actually mix my syrup in. I've got a sewage pump ready to go to do that, but I haven't plumbed it or anything yet. So that may be a winter project, but by next year, my feeding system should be a lot more capable than what it is right now. So I gotta say, that's a professional looking install there. Extension cord run through the same hole that the AC unit is running out of. Got some J-channel flashing. That won't leak. Used almost a full tube of silicone on it. Yeah. Yeah, that looks great. Something to be proud of. There's some tradesmen watching this channel that are cringing right now, but I bet it'll work.